All right. Hi, everyone. Good evening, good morning to all of you joining in. Just leave us a hi here on the chat if you can hear me, see me. Great. We're also live on YouTube. So if you're watching us from YouTube, also feel free to interact with us on the live chat. Yes. Great. Hello, Jitendra and everyone else. Just leave us your name and the city that you're from. I'm Aparna and I'm going to be your host for today. Really excited to bring this session to you because you're going to have a live demonstration of top 5 tools that you need to know if you want to pursue a career in UI UX design. Okay, Jitendra, hi. You're from Bhiwandi. Abdul from Saudi Arabia. Good evening, Abdul. Everyone else, just leave us a hi on the chat so we'll know you're here. Let us know your name and the city that you're from. I'm Aparna. I'm going to be your host. We have Ben who will take you through the session. I'm streaming from Bangalore. Michael, you're from Mount Carmel. Okay, Naveen, Kannan, good evening. Bobby, you're from India. Good evening. Roshan from Nepal. Lucky, nice name. You're from Botswana. Nice. Hello, Yinka. Satyarth, hi, good evening. Tiana, you're from France. Good day to you. Okay, Sarabjit, hi. Yes. Okay, great. Great to see all of your introductions coming in. Nice. Cool. So let's quickly get started and understand what the agenda is going to be. You are going to understand the different tools that you may be using and how you should develop these skills and why these skills are relevant if you want to become a UI UX designer. So we're going to cover that today. And in process, you're going to understand how the Caltech UI UX Bootcamp will help you develop these skills and develop an understanding of these tools. Towards the end, we'll also take questions that you may have. Remember, you may have a lot of questions while we're demonstrating these tools, actually. So please try to listen, to our expert completely before you pose a question, because it may distract the other learners. So use the Q&A box for the questions. Refrain posting questions on the chat box because it may get missed, right? So I will close the chat box down to just avoid distraction, so that you're learning and you're also gaining the maximum from the session. So use the Q&A box and make sure your questions are relevant to what's going on. And we may not be able to point out your exact name while answering these questions, but I will summarize them and then give it to Ben so that he answers, right? Yeah. So do not worry if we're not answering your questions immediately. We're not addressing your concern immediately. Is that fine? Yes. Give me a thumbs up or something so that I know you've understood. Yes, because this is a live demonstration of tools. You may have, things to ask. So remember, just keep it relevant, be a little patient. We'll have them answer towards the end. Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's great. Everyone else, I hope, is clear. Now, towards the end, we'll also collect names for giving you certificates. So this is how your certificate is going to look like. And we'll collect your names through a poll. So please make sure you wait till the end if you want this certificate. Okay? All right. Great. Thank you so much for to people on YouTube for your introductions. We're just about to get started. If you guys have questions, make sure you use the live chat. Remember, people on Zoom, use the Q&A box. Okay. So just a little bit about Simplilearn before we start. Simplilearn offers digital skills, skills for you to remain relevant in today's times across domains. We've got courses for you in product, in the design domain, in AI, ML, data science, all of the tech domains that you can see. So if you're interested in exploring our portfolio of courses, you can head to simplylearn.com. And of course, today's focus is only UI UX design, and we're going to talk about a particular course offered by Caltech CTME. So you will understand the details of that towards the end. Okay, so that's just a little bit about Simplylearn. Now let's understand about Ben Woods. He's our expert speaker today. He's got immense expertise and experience in UI UX design, and he's driven results for many companies. He's also improved customer satisfaction conversion rates for a lot of companies. So he's not limited to working just in the UI UX design as an executive, but he's also taken up roles in the academia. So welcome, Ben, to this session. It's glad to have you here. If you could just introduce yourself to the learners.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Ben Woods. As Aparna said, I've been working in UX for more than 20 years with lots of different companies, a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurs, as well as a lot of large global companies and firms. I've worked with manufacturing companies, healthcare and pharmaceutical companies, financial services, quite a bit in financial services area. And I've also presented and led training sessions with audiences throughout the United States, in Europe, as well as Singapore. So I have a lot of experience in seeing a lot of tools in my day and seeing a lot of projects. And what we'll cover today is really going to be, I'm going to say, kind of a survey of some really interesting features of 5 tools that we use frequently in the UX area. So they won't be a super comprehensive learning session, but it's certainly going to show you some really interesting things that we see with these tools, and maybe give you some ideas on how you can start using some of these tools in your work. Obviously, whenever we do the full boot camps with Caltech, we go into much more detail and actually do a lot more learnings around how to use these tools and get into specific features and that sort of thing.
Great. Thanks for that. And you also mentioned that people would learn to use these tools at various stages of the UX design process. So that also will help them gain an understanding of how these are relevant, right? You mentioned that towards the beginning. Great. So just to understand all of you learners a bit more, I'm just going to ask you a quick question about your experience. So let me know how many years of experience you have through this poll that I've launched on Zoom. Choose the right option, whichever seems the most appropriate. Yes, again, just to know you a bit more about. And this can be any experience, needn't necessarily be specific to UI UX design. Okay. Great. So I'm going to keep the poll live for another 30 seconds. Use the poll, Vio Khana. Yes. Okay. You guys can also rename yourselves just so that we know your actual name instead of addressing you as an email ID. Okay. Great. Thanks so much for your responses. I'm going to share this with Ben. You able to see these results, Ben? Yeah.
Yep.
It's about 42% of them have 0 to 3 years of experience. Okay. Great. I think I'll hand it over to you, when I think you can take over from here. And do you want me to stop my screen sharing?
Yeah, let me share my screen here and
Right.
we'll get to it.
Yeah, here you go.
Here we go. Okay. I assume you're able to see my screen. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Let me move this away. All right, so let's start off with a tool that is, I would say, it's a newer tool for UX practitioners. It's something that you've certainly seen in the news. It's ChatGPT. So, ChatGPT, if you're not familiar, it's a generative AI tool. I'm not going to get into a whole explanation of how large language models or AI work, other than to share with you that there are certainly great ways that you can incorporate GPTs and these sorts of tools into your workflow. So, to start off with, let's ask a question. How would a UX designer or a UX professional really even use a large language model or a ChatGPT? So the answer I will give you is a lot of what we do as UX professionals is really about understanding the audiences we're designing for, and a lot of our projects, in fact, every one of our projects really starts off with a lot of research and understanding how people actually behave and how they live and how they work. So I'm going to stop my share for just a minute. I'm going to change to share my whole screen just so you can see what we're going to do here. Um, so I've got one. So I've got here. We'll go back to ChatGPT. So we've got ChatGPT here, and on my desktop, I have. Let's just pretend we're in a. Let's give you. I'll give you kind of a pretend scenario. Let's imagine that we work for a financial services company. This is actually a very realistic project. Something very similar to something I've worked on. And so what you see here are 6 reports from the FDIC as well as other organizations. So here we have 11 pages for report. Let's see. Here's a nice big one. This is I think 100. This is an 86-page report from the FDIC, all about banking trends. Let's see, what else do we have here? Here's another one. Executive. This is a report. Here's 108 pages discussing unbanked and underbanked. So we can guess that we have maybe about 300-400 pages of reports and documents to look through. And our job as a UX professional is to understand why is it that a certain portion of the population doesn't use banks. And of course, if I work for a bank, I want more people to use banks. So what we've got here is a lot of research, a lot of publicly made research, publicly provided research. And this is just 6 documents. In a real project, we would have many, many, many more documents. Let's see what we can understand about people who are not using banking services with ChatGPT and with these reports that we've got here. So I'm going to upload these. And a lot of what we do, and we do this in the course as well, is we really try to understand how users work. And we usually start off with some background information like this. And then we might create surveys and interview questions to understand how people work. So let me make sure these are all uploaded. Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a prompt for ChatGPT, asking it to do a quick analysis and then to help me create an interview instrument so I can take this out and actually ask participants intelligent questions. So I have a little bit of knowledge before I start the interview, right? So please analyze. And this is a live demonstration, so I might make some misspellings, but we'll fix those if we can. You please. And I'll try to keep this interview short. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT to provide me with 10 questions. I'm going to adjust this just a little bit using this data. Could you please provide me with 10 questions, 10 good questions that I could pose to a participant in an interview about underserved banking populations. So what we're doing with right now is we're taking hundreds of pages of information, we're consolidating it down, and we're asking ChatGPT, hey, give me 10 good questions that I can take into an interview so I can talk to somebody about underbanking and unbanked people, and that the questions are useful and will give me good information, because it's important in UX to ask good questions to get good information. I want to get a good understanding of the challenge of what I'm going to say of what leads to unbanked populations. All right, we're going to upload this. We're going to get GPT a few minutes, maybe a minute or two. We're going to really see how fast Chat GPT can analyze these. And oh, here we go. And so you can see how really quickly we can actually get some really decent questions that we could ask somebody who maybe doesn't have a bank account. We know that having a bank account is generally considered important, at least in the West, to build wealth and to have access to things like credit markets and such. So if you, at least in the West, if you don't have a bank account, it can be a real challenge to getting jobs, building wealth, getting homes, etc. So let's take a look at some of these questions. So what are primary reasons that you or your household don't have a bank account? There's a lot of reasons. Could be fees, privacy concerns. Here's an interesting one. Have you explored alternative financial services? So people maybe do take advantage of financial services, but maybe just not the banks that we're familiar with. Here's an interesting one. How stable is your monthly income? And does this impact your decision to use or avoid a bank account? So you have here are some really interesting first level questions that we could take to a user, to a participant, to really understand what leads them to be unbanked. And you can see we did this in about 5 minutes. So this is a good way to start research. And I would say that we would want to continue doing more research as we were working on this project, but you can see how this can be really useful to kind of get you a good head start in your project. So let's move on to our next tool. This is also another very basic tool that we use. This is what's called a card sort. One of the things that we really focus on in UX is a concept that we call information architecture. And what information architecture is really it's as simple as this. It's how do we organize things and what do we call things, right? So if you go to a grocery store is organized in a certain way, and different products are called have different names, and they generally have common names no matter what grocery store you go to. We do the same thing for websites, mobile apps, and software, but we call it information architecture. And one of the basic tools that we use is what's called a card sort. Now, 20 years ago, we might have done this at a desk with actual note cards. But as you can see here, we have a digital tool that lets us sort this information. And just like my grocery example, we have a list of foods here, and we want to understand how would a person organize these foods. So would we put a milkshake in health food? Probably not. We might put this maybe for kids, piklets with jam and cream, pikelets. I don't know what a pikelet is, but I'm not going to eat it. Macaroni and cheese, that's probably an everyday. Hot sauce, occasional buttered toast, breakfast, espresso. Well, depending on who you are, I would say in the morning, but my wife's family would drink espresso any time of the day. Roast chicken, we could call that every day eating. Carrot sticks, we'll call it health food. Sushi, call it dinner. Grapefruit, most people here eat it in the morning. Oatmeal, banana bread. I like banana bread, so I eat it anytime. Tap water. It's kind of funny. It's kind of healthy and it's an everyday thing. So here you can see very quickly how we can organize different labels, different concepts into different categories. And then this ultimately leads to what we would call what would become the navigation for a website. Now, the power of this particular tool, which is called Optimal Workshop or Optimal Sort, is that you can put together this instrument, this research instrument. You can deploy this to 3, 30, 100 people. And what is good about this is you'll get a really good picture of how lots of people would organize these concepts, and that can help build your confidence as you build your navigation for a website or for a software tool. So that's how optimal sort works. The next thing, and of course here you can see there's an analytics tool on the back side of it, which is really useful. So after you send out your card sort, and by the way, usually you get the results within 24 hours, sometimes less. That's been my experience. And then you're able to do the analysis. So here you can see information about your participants, how long each participant took to complete the task. You can see the questionnaire that we asked them. We might ask them some questionnaire to ask them to describe how they cook. And then here you can see the analysis of how they actually organize different concepts. And so you can see banana bread. Some people put it in occasional, some people put it in breakfast, some people put it in they wouldn't eat it. And here you can see how common it was for a person to put banana bread in occasional. And you can see it was much more common to be in occasional than it was to be in yuck, I wouldn't eat it. And so you can see the power of this tool. And of course, there's lots of different ways that we can actually visualize this data, again, to help us to get a good understanding of how to organize these concepts. So again, this was a really small card sort with, I think, 5 to 6 participants, but it gives you an idea of how we can use card sorts and how we can use these data visualization tools to support the construction and the building of our navigation. Now, one of the great things that I like to do after card sort is actually takes us to our next tool, which is called Tree Jack. So we've taken our card sort. Let's imagine we've created a navigation hierarchy, and we want to test that with people. So whereas the card sort helps us to understand how groups of people might organize information, what we call tree test, or in this case, the tool is called Tree Jack. This helps us to validate that a user can actually use the navigation that we have constructed, a hierarchical navigation that we've constructed. Great thing about Tree Jack is it focuses exclusively on the labels and on the relationships between the information objects. So we don't get too worried about things like logos, colors, pictures, and visual design. It's all about understanding the semantic meaning of these terms. And so here we can see we only have 3 tasks I'll demonstrate to you. Here we're asking a user, you're renovating your home and you need a new stove. So where would you go to find one? Now, this might be a navigation for a hardware store or maybe a utility store. I would probably go to products. Oh, and we have a sub navigation that we can go through. So where in products would I find a stove? Well, probably not going to find it in the bathroom. I might find it in dining. I might find it in eating. Is there a kitchen? I think I'm going to go with kitchen. So kitchen. Oh, we have another navigation. Well, we have ovens and ranges. Well, that's interesting. Is a stove an oven or a range? So I'm going to go with range, and I'm going to say I find it here. And so this just illustrates to you kind of how we work through understanding how to organize information and how sometimes there can be overlaps in labels. We'll go with another one. I'm going to buy a refrigerator. Same thing. I'm going to go to the kitchen. I'm sure they have refrigerators and freezers. Let's see. I'm in my 2nd year of college. My parents want me to buy a file cabinet. All right. Products. I'm going to hit. Is there an office? Maybe we'll go with office furniture. And I'll go with storage cabinets. I'll say I find it here. And then, of course, we can always ask follow-up questions with this tool. So let's take a look at the analysis. And this is the analysis of the test that we ran. Now, this isn't with me. This is with other participants. And you can see here with TreeJack, we have 5 participants who participated. And we can look at the analysis. And the visualizations are great because this helps us to see where a user went. So remember our first question, you're renovating your home and you need a new stove. So we start down and we start off here. You can see how the color codes work. Green means they went down the right path. Red means they went down the wrong path. And then this blue color means they went back. And yellow means they indicated this was the right destination. So here you can see they started off. Most of our users went down the right path to products. One user went down to offers, which is not a bad place to go if they are looking for a sale. But most users went to products. Interestingly, one user went to cooking. Most of our users went to kitchen. And you'll recall that whenever I did this, we looked at would be a cooked. Actually, I don't even know if we saw cooktops. I think we saw ovens and ranges. I didn't see cooktops. I selected ranges. And so actually, you can see that the lines are green for both. So both are right. So in this case, what we find is the categorization for ranges and cooktops is right for this question to find a new stove. So that's an example of how we can test navigation. A demonstration on UX tools would probably not be complete if we didn't at least talk about Figma for a minute. This is Figma, and I'm not going to get into a whole big demonstration of how Figma works, because frankly, a lot of the design capabilities in Figma are actually very similar to other tools. But what I do want to share with you are some really interesting things that Figma has introduced using AI tools. So in the past, if I had 2 screens here, and it would be common for us to have multiple screens with similar titles, and maybe even similar UI. In the past, if I had to make a change to this UI, so let's imagine we said, oh, we're not going to call this my app. We're going to change the name of this to the app. I would have to go through and I would have to do this on every single page, every single frame that I'm looking at. So that is very tedious, and that can be very time consuming, especially if you have an app or a software or a website that has 100 pages and you're trying to make a very comprehensive prototype. Figma realized that that is not a good use of our time. And so what they've done is they realized that if I want to make a change to this title, I probably want to make a change to this title too. So what they've done is if you select both of these titles, and again, this could be 2 titles or it could be 200 titles, hit enter, we can start changing all the titles on all of the screens. And this is just a huge time saver and a really great example of how AI is really supercharging the UX tools that we have in our tool belt. Here's another example. In the past, if I had to, maybe I wanted to rotate an icon for whatever reason, I would have to do that on every single page. Now with Figma, they're smart enough. They know that if I want to rotate this tool on this, an icon on this screen, I probably want to rotate on that screen too. And so we have this very smart multi-level editing capability with Figma. So again, that's just a really quick example of how AI is being integrated with Figma. And this is a tool that we would use after we've done our surveys and after we've done our interviews, after we've done our card story, after we've done our tree testing. This is where we start creating wireframes and prototypes. So now let's get to our fifth tool. And this is really kind of showing you the timeline and the life cycle of how a UX project can work. So we'll imagine we've created our wireframes and our prototypes. We've given the work to the developers. We now have a live site. So our work's not done still, because we're really interested in how people use our site in the real world. And that brings me to one of my favorite tools called Hotjar. And Hotjar is a session recording tool that we can use. We can deploy it on our websites. And this helps us to get a very, very good understanding of how people really use our tool in the wild, right? So we usually talk about user testing and interviews, but those are usually in a lab or in kind of an artificial setting. Hotjar basically lets us watch people use our website and records what happens. And so here I'll show you an example. This is a demonstration site. This is a Hotjar. This is just showing how a person would navigate this website. It's a very quick recording. We can see the track path of the mouse, and generally there's about an 80% correlation of mouse activity to attention. So what that means is if my mouse is somewhere, there's an 80% chance that my eyes are also looking there. So that helps us to get a very good sense of where people are looking on our websites. Hotjar has other capabilities as well. In addition to recording, we also have heat maps. So this is a great visualization that helps us to see, what I have here, we'll show the engagement zones. So where are people scrolling? We can also look at where are they clicking. We'll turn that off. So here you can see we have a click here. All the clicks are basically up here, but again, it's a very powerful tool. Oh. Here you can see movement. So you can see these little blue areas indicate where mouse movement is happening. And again, this helps us to understand how people navigate our site. You can see other things like, do they scroll? And in this case, you can see that 100% of people scrolled to a certain distance and 75% got to another distance and then dropped down to about 66% got all the way to the bottom. So again, these are visualizations that help us to get a really good understanding of how people are using a live experience. So that was a really quick survey of how we can use these 5 tools, and there's many others to really support our decisions and our design work through a UX project.
Great, thanks, Ben. Thanks for this demonstration. I was just about to ask our learners a quick question again as to which tool they know the most. I'm just going to launch that poll here. And so obviously ChatGPT, if you've used it for UX design, you can mark that as your answer. Here you go. I'm just going to launch the poll now. And people on YouTube, also let us know which tool you've used the most or the best. Quick answers. I've also opened the chat now, and feel free to post your questions as well if you have any. Right. Right. Keep them coming. Also, people on YouTube, which tool have you used the most, or do you know the best? You're the most familiar with it. Just let us know through the poll. Okay, so for people who are not selecting, Hotjar or Optimal Workshop, I hope you understand now as to how you can use them. Yeah. Okay, great. Great. Thanks so much for these answers. So you guys can let us know on the chat. So what is exactly stopping you from becoming a UI UX expert, or someone who can pursue a UX design as a career? So what is exactly stopping you here? Just let us know your responses on the chat while I keep this poll live. Yes, I've opened up the chat, so let us know what exactly is stopping you. What do you think is stopping you? Is it the curriculum? You find that upskilling is not an option with your work schedule? You feel that you don't have enough practical exposure? Whatever your option is, just let us know on the chat. Yes. Okay. I think you don't have the skill sets, you don't have experience. You're not able to understand the psychology of clients. Okay, your work schedule is a problem. What else? What else? You don't have the, okay, skill set is an issue. All right. Who else? We're about to address these concerns, and we're about to talk about the course and how it exactly fulfills all of your requirements. But I would like to understand, what is it that is your stopper? Please put it on the chat. Great. I think I'm going to share the results here with Ben. Ben, you can see that people are only familiar with Figma and ChatGPT for UX design. Not many have used the other two tools that you've mentioned. Okay, fees is a problem for upskilling. Creativity block. It happens most of the time, which is why I want to ask which tools I can use for inspiration. Okay, do you want to answer this question, Ben, which is what do they do if they have a creativity block? Or what do you do rather?
Uh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
One of the things that I would say is really critical for UX professionals, researchers, designers, what have you, and product designers. One of the things that I would say is really important is to have a sense of curiosity. Um, that's the number one skill I would say for UX is you really want to be interested in why is it that people do things the way they do, right? Why are things designed the way they are?
Mm.
Um, and I think that when you have that curiosity, that can lead to more creativity because when we see things and we start questioning things, then we can start thinking about the way things maybe should be or could be made differently. So, I mean, I think that's, whenever I have a creative block, I think it's really useful to, again, just observe the world around you.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really, in my career, I've often said, if I was working for a manufacturing firm, I would say, yeah, we can certainly look at our competitors, but what's really interesting is let's look at consumer companies, right? Let's look at other companies. Let's look at what other like video games are doing to create engaging experiences. So, I think the number one thing is just being very observant and curious.
Yeah, I think that's also the answer to how you understand psychology of your clients. I think one this answers that concern as well. Whoever had that question. Okay, great. So all of you feel fee schedule UI UX a separate subject, or they must be in one full course. Again, we could take this before we proceed and talk about the course. Ben, is our UI UX two separate subjects? And how are they exactly brought together in a course?
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting. I mean, and I will share that there are differing opinions in the profession about UX and UI and whether they're combined together. And I'll just give you the quick definition, the quick Ben Woods definition of them. The UX is generally the entire experience that a person has with your product or services. So that could be from I mean, I'm not I have a phone here, oh, you can't see it. Yeah, I have a Samsung phone here. And so my experience with using this, it goes from um buying, procuring the phone, opening the box, setting it up, um performing tasks to set it up, migrating information from my old phone, um contacting my carrier if I'm having challenges with it, doing software updates, contacting Samsung if I have a problem with the software updates. So the experience is much broader, and I would say generally much more general and all encompassing. And UI, which stands for user interface, is typically a lot more constrained and a lot more focused. So if I'm a UX designer for this phone, I'm interested in, the cradle to grave, the start to finish relationship that the user has with the phone. If I'm a UI designer, I'm probably a lot more focused on the iconography and the size relationships and the colors and and the appearance of how things work, and not just the appearance, but also micro interactions. So
Right.
how do I let the user know that they have made a selection or that they are doing something on the phone? So that's the difference between UI and UX. Now, some places separate them entirely, and some places like Simplilearn put them together in one boot camp.
Got it. Got it. I think with that, I request all of you to put your questions on the Q&A box and to address your concern about skill set, because most of you felt you either don't have the skill set, you are an entire newcomer to this domain, so you don't understand the basics. You have that concern. Most of you have these concerns. A couple of you said the work schedule is a problem, right? So which is where the Caltech UI UX Bootcamp fits in and solves these concerns for you through a curriculum that is designed by industry experts. You've got a lot of hands-on projects, which includes using some of these tools that you saw today. And of course, learning from instructors that are experts in the field. You also get to interact with your peers in the class. You've got live classroom learning, through which it makes it easier for you to understand and relate to how these tools can be used in the real world, right? So the best part is that this entire course is online, and you've got you spend 5 months doing this course, and you spend about 10 to 15 hours per week doing this. So it comfortably fits into your lifestyle if you are working, or you have a part-time job, whatever your situation is. This course fits into your lifestyle and schedule. Okay, so let's just understand a bit more about the course. You've got the Caltech CTME advantage with this particular course. So Caltech CTME, I mean, I don't think I need to give you an introduction of how this credibility can boost your chances, can just give you the visibility that you need, right? So more about this on the course landing page. I will show you how, this is an advantage for you while you are enrolled in the course, right, in some time. But some of you also may wonder, what is it that you actually need to be a part of the course? So you can be anyone who is 18 and above and still enroll in the course. So if you want to switch to this particular field, this particular course is the right fit for you. So you can be an aspiring designer, you can be a designer who is looking to enhance their chances, boost their chances, grow their career. Whatever the case is, you can be a part of this course, right? So Ben, I think you can now help everyone understand how exactly this curriculum is a great fit for people looking to transition or enhance their career.
Yeah. So as we look at the ladder that we have here, we start off with the curriculum, starting off with understanding, starting off at the bottom. We have an orientation session. We have a survey of what user experience is. And then just as I was discussing the slight difference between UX and UI, after talking about the general approach for UX, we get into specifics on user interface and design principles. Which is a very fun module, because it really helps us to understand how it is that, the things in our lives, again, how does this roll of tape communicate its function to me? So, and there are actually very good, well-established principles to how we design things for usability. Then we get into user interface prototyping and styling. That's where we're going to get into a lot of Figma work. We're going to do a lot of work on the use of color, the use of fonts, creating clickable prototypes. We have user research and testing, which again is foundational to designing good experiences. And that ranges, kind of as I demonstrated, it ranges from the start of a project where we try to understand people, all the way to the end of a project when we're performing usability tests and even doing analytics and monitoring live experiences. The newer portion is introducing UI and UX in AI and VR and AR environments. Funny thing is, I've actually been playing with AR. I'm not even exaggerating, probably since about 2010. We had prototypes with the company that I was working with, I think it's an interesting time because we've finally gotten to the point where the computing costs have gotten low enough and the display costs have gotten low enough that there's real potential for AR and VR to actually be applied more broadly than it has been in the last 15 years. Um, I think we're still looking for that killer app for consumers. I think in manufacturing and very specific industries, there's a very strong use case, but not sure we're quite there with consumers, but we'll see. And then finally, one of the I think biggest features and most important features is the capstone project, which is really an opportunity for you to leverage everything you've learned throughout the course in a larger project where you're really able to demonstrate a full understanding of research, prototyping, wireframing, usability testing, and the like.
Right, absolutely. So I think that's your answer to these questions where they said, how do I get projects? How do I switch my careers? I think the capstone project is a real demonstration that you can implement your theoretical learning in practice and be used and value addition to the companies that you're looking out for. Right. So you've got electives as well. You've got a masterclass from Caltech Caltech CTME, and you've got a design thinking masterclass. You've got a networking session as well with the leaders in the industry, and then also website building using HTML and CSS. So again, could you just explain how this is relevant in UI UX for people looking to switch?
Well, I mean, I think especially I'll just look at two of these, for example. So website building with HTML5 and CSS. One of the questions I get frequently is, do I, as a UX professional, need to know how to code? And my response to that often is it depends. It really does depend on what industry you're going into and what your background is. And the example I frequently give is, if I'm a UX professional working for a startup in San Francisco and they're trying to build a great, app that's going to change the world, it's probably going to be important for me as a UX professional to have some coding ability. And to be fair, I used to do a fair amount of coding myself earlier in my career when I was working for smaller companies. That just helps projects move along. Now, on the other hand, if I'm a UX designer in Detroit working for the Ford Motor Company, and I'm working on their new F-150 pickup truck, they don't really care if I know HTML or CSS. What they're more interested in is, do I understand ergonomics and human factors and those sorts of things? And so, the thing about UX I think is really important to understand and can be a little frustrating for people who are trying to get into the profession is there's different flavors of UX professionals, and it really is dependent on what industry you're going into. Now, that said, they all have essentially the same foundational principles around user-centered design, iteration, research, and the like. Design thinking is another thing I'm going to touch on briefly. Design thinking is, I would say, kind of the cousin of UX. It's as I describe it, it is a way of making design methods accessible to people who are not professional designers. So they get visibility into and can participate in design processes, which, for a UX professional, it can be very useful to help people to understand the work that we do.
Got it. Great. Thanks so much for this detailed explanation. We're now going to understand the different tools that you're going to learn through this particular course, some of which we learned today, some of which you learned to use today. But again, could you highlight the skills and tools that someone would develop through this course?
Yeah, we're in a course right now, and we're doing work with Figma, with FigJam, Gemini, of course, and ChatGPT are the big AI tools that are out there. I know Notion is useful for I believe it's note taking. I believe workflow creation. I mean, there's a lot of tools here. Frankly, there's even more tools. Well, you
Yeah,
have AI4. So it's almost impossible for anybody to know all of these tools, but it is possible to have a good collection of tools. Behance is largely a portfolio tool. I believe it's owned by
yes,
Adobe. I need to check. But that just helps us to make our portfolios accessible and usable to folks.
exactly. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen and explain the course, very, very briefly because we're running out of time. We also have to take questions. So remember, I told you about Caltech CTME, and also some of you had asked which tools do you start with. See, I think this is where, or how do you exactly display your experience? So your portfolio here that you can build through this course will help you get that credibility. And with Caltech CTME, you get 10 continuing education units. So that's also a credential that you can add. You get an access to the Caltech CTME membership on LinkedIn. And apart from that, you get to attend a Caltech CTME online graduation. So it happens in a very similar fashion as this. Apart from this, apart from all these features and the curriculum, you get access to Simplilearn's career service. What exactly is career service? You get help in terms of refining your resume, making sure you get attention from employers. You also get access to premium membership on Talent Inc. if you're from the US, or IIM Jobs if you're from India, right? So you get access for 6 months, and then that is where you can use this membership to apply to companies that you were always looking to work with. Okay, so these are some features of the course, and quickly about the certificate. So this is how your certificate looks like. Okay, and one more thing is that you get access to this particular learning environment. Now, this learning environment is mostly for accessing your curriculum, understanding your progress, checking all the self-learning materials that are there, and also attending live classes. So you can use this particular environment to interact with your peers, also interact with the support team. You could ask for help through this particular button, or also take notes. So this is like your learning guide, just helping you track your progress and curriculum and everything else. Yeah, so that's just a quick summary about the course. Now, a quick update about the cohort. So before I'll just kind of skip a lot of slides because we're running out of time. But if you are looking to enroll, the next cohort starts on the 7th of December, and you still have time. I mean, of course, the induction classes start tomorrow, but you still have time to apply, and you will still be taken in for this particular cohort, right? And how do you exactly express interest? You can do that by selecting a yes on this particular poll that I've launched on Zoom, and you will be contacted by a learning advisor. Now, if you're looking to understand more details about this course, you could just scan this QR code and also drop your information on the course page, and someone will reach out to you and answer all the concerns that you have. Okay, and most people may have this question about the course fee. What if there are discounts? How do I know that? The learning advisor is the right person for this. Why we haven't displayed the course fee here is that this is a global webinar. We've got learners from across the globe. It's going to be hard for us to display our actual cost of the program, for all currencies. So just maybe check out the course page, and you will get the currency specific to your country. Okay, right. So I'm going to take some questions. I'm going to pass it on to Ben. I think
Yeah,
the one.
there there's one question in here that I really want to answer because it looks like a fun question from John's iPhone. Is there a bad way of UI UX? If there is, can you share some example? And what should I avoid as a beginner? And I'll give you a really great example. Yeah, there is. I'll start off by saying there are many ways to do UX well. For example, and when I say there's many ways to do UX well, I would say in terms of just thinking about your tool set, there's Figma, there's Sketch, there's Acture, there's lots of tools out there. There's lots of ways to do UX well. I'm very tool agnostic, but there are very there are a few ways to do UX very badly, and I'll give you an example from early in my career. I was actually a manager, and I had some consultants come in who were doing UX. The way to do UX bad is to not incorporate research. So I had these guys who called themselves UX designers. They showed me a lot of pixel perfect wireframes, and they had absolutely no research behind it. And my response to them was, well, if you are not incorporating user information and user research into your design work, then you're not doing user experience design. You're just doing graphic design. So, two things that I would say avoid creating designs that don't incorporate some degree of research. And the other is don't start off with making pixel perfect wireframes. At the beginning of a project, it's actually a lot better to have very rough, sketchy wireframes and concepts, because that helps us to really iterate and find new ideas.
Right. So, which brings us to the next question, which was there in the chat box. How does one go about research, finding the right target audience, asking them the questions, and then also once we have the responses, how to take them and convert it to a design? So that's the next question.
Yeah, finding the right target. I mean, we actually do talk about this in our courses. My experience has been that finding the right target audience and recruiting is the toughest part of any research activity for so many reasons. People are oversampled, they're oversurveyed. Everywhere you go, people are asking you to take a survey. Um, so that gets really tough. Um, Making sure you have the right questions. The good thing is we talk about this as well. There is an art to asking good questions. We talk about how do we avoid asking leading questions? How do we avoid personal bias in our questions?
Mhm.
One of the things that we typically try to do in my work is we try to avoid bias from designers. So, for example, if I'm designing something, I like to have another person do the usability testing, because as a designer, there is what we call the IKEA effect, right? I think it's good because I built it, but it's important to get a third party to actually test it. This is another example from earlier in my career. I was working with a consulting firm, and they were paid a lot of money to design a translation method for a website, and they ran the usability test, and surprise, surprise, it worked perfectly. And it was just not, it's just not credible. A good usability test, if it's run well, is going to find problems. And that's what we want, is to find problems during usability tests. We don't want to find problems after a project has been launched.
Got it. Great. Another question that we have is, are there any specialized tools for animation or micro interactions in UI design?
Yeah, for micro interactions, Figma's pretty good. But I would say Figma is kind of where you would go for your micro interactions. In terms of animation, I'm not quite as conversant in animation.
Right. Okay. And one more question we have is, which tools are best for strategy formulation and performance monitoring?
So for strategy formulation, I mean, if we're working from my experience, that's going to involve a lot of facilitating of workshops and large group dynamics. So I typically use Miro. Another tool is FigJam or Mural, and these are essentially digital whiteboarding tools. Good thing is they include a lot of facilitation tools. They allow like dot voting, polls, those sorts of things. So if I'm developing a strategy, I'm going to be using Miro or Mural or FigJam. In terms of performance monitoring, there's a lot of them out there. Google Analytics is certainly the most popular analytics tool for measuring what's happening on your website. But Hotjar, I only showed you a couple of things that Hotjar does. Hotjar does a lot more than what you saw. So Hotjar is very good. If you're going more towards an IT direction, you might look at something like a Dynatrace, which is more, as I understand it, about understanding uptimes. But those are the tools I would have familiarity with.
Got it. Great. Thanks. So I'm also going to share the link to the course page here. for people to take a look at the details and express their interest to a learning advisor. If you are still interested, you can click a yes on the poll. And whatever questions you have about how this course is exactly going to help are there here in this particular section of the course page. So you can see that you get enough practical exposure, you understand a lot of tools that are most commonly used in UX design, and also understand you can also stay relevant by understanding how Gen AI influences design and how AR and VR are used in improving the whole design process, right? So you can take a look at all of these details in the course page, and we are on to the next question. I think you've already answered this, but do you recommend any specific tools for building and showcasing a portfolio? I'm sure you've answered this, but anyway.
Yeah, Dribble and Behance are really popular. Me personally, I simply use a website for myself. But yeah, there's lots of ways to share a portfolio.
Right. Got it. Got it. All right. Great. So is that it? Do we have more questions? Let me also open up the chat. In case you have questions, we are open to taking them for another 5 minutes before we close. So Balvinder has a question. How do I project myself to SaaS companies if I want to get in there? She has that question.
That is a really tough question.
Yeah.
Because that's I would say that's a lot more about career management, and I would say networking and really just kind of um every job, every project I've gotten has generally been through networking and people knowing me.
Yeah.
So I would say if that's what you're interested in, I would say network and get to know people who are in that space.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I think which is also, continuation to that is the next question, which is how does one get projects from big companies? Otherwise, they're easily, they get project. Oh, Balvinder she had the same question. She or he had the same question as to how to get projects from big companies. So I think this is the answer to that networking. I mean, try and find out which companies have opportunities, try to understand what's happening around, and then network with the right people. Great. All right, I think this brings us to the end of the session. I'm still waiting for questions, but I don't think we have any. Others, maybe you guys can wait because we're still collecting names for the certificate. But Ben, I think this was a great session, great understanding of how these tools are relevant to UX design. And also, thanks so much for taking all of these questions. It was great having you today. Do you have any closing thoughts?
No, thanks for having me. And I would say if you are interested in UX and UI as a career, it's definitely one that I've enjoyed a lot. I'm really glad that I made the decision to go into UX. I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. Like I said, it's been a very exciting career. I've gotten to learn so much about so many different industries and meet so many different people and see so many different parts of the world that I never would have experienced if I had not made the decision to go into UX all those years ago.
Great, great, great. Thanks. I hope this nudges a lot of people to take up this domain. I mean, take up a career in this domain. Great. Thank you so much, Ben. Now we're on to taking names for certificates. I'm going to end this poll. Remember, if you're still interested, you can check out the course page and fill in your information for someone to contact you. Okay, so here you go. Sorry. Yeah. So you guys can fill in your name here and you will receive the certificate in the next couple of days. And this is how your certificate will look like. Okay, I've showed you me show you the certificate once again, in case you're wondering which certificate I'm talking about. This one. So this is just a proof for your attendance in the webinar. So you can share this on any of the social platforms and tag Ben as well. Please fill in your entry and you will receive the link to this recording and the certificate as an email. If you wish to take a look at the recording right away, YouTube is your option. Head to Simplilearn's YouTube channel and take a look at the live stream that we just had. Okay, Aziz has one last question, Ben. Which skill has high demand, WordPress or UX designing? I'm not sure of how to answer this.
Yeah, I think it depends on what, honestly, it's really hard for me to say that one has greater demand than the other because they are, at least in my experience, kind of different. UX design is going to be a lot more about understanding people, the engineering tasks, that sort of thing. If you're describing WordPress, I guess I'm thinking you're talking about making custom themes, custom plugins, and the like, and that's going to be a more of a coding skill in my experience, where you're going to be doing a lot more with JavaScript, PHP, and CSS. Now, it's certainly possible that there are people out there that do both. In fact, I know there are people out there who do both. But yeah, it's really hard for me to say that one is more or less in demand than the other.
Got it. Okay. Great. So I think that brings us to the end of the session. We've also collected all the names. It was great bringing to you this session. If you've got any more questions about the course or about your enrollment, please reach out on Ask Us, ASKUS at simplylearn.net, and someone will reach out to you and get your doubts clarified. Okay. The link to the course page is still there on the chat. You can copy paste that and access that whenever you need to, and check out the course details. And also I'm looking forward to having you in the course, right? Great. Thank you so much, everyone. I will end the session right now. Hema Malini, if you've not submitted your name, which is why, please do it first minute itself. Okay, I've shared an email ID. Please share your details there and we will give you the certificate. Okay? All right, great. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a good day.